Jesse Winters had buried enough people to know the sound of death. But this sound, this thin, desperate wail cutting through the Wyoming blizzard, wasn't death. It was a baby fighting to live. He found them in a snowdrift. A woman curled around an infant, her lips blue, her arms locked tight, even as her body surrendered to the cold. The child screamed against her frozen breast. Jesse had spent 17 years running from everything. But when that baby's cry pierced his chest, he knew running ended here. This is their story. Stay until the end. Hit that subscribe button and comment your city below, so I can see how far this tale travels. The wind howled like something wounded and angry. Jesse Winters pulled his collar higher and cursed under his breath. 3 days of riding through this frozen hell in Silver Creek was still another 5 miles out. His horse, a gray mare named Smoke, had slowed to a stubborn walk, her head bowed against the driving snow. "Easy, girl," he patted her neck. "We're almost there." That was a lie. They both knew it. The Wyoming winter had come early, and mean this year. November hadn't even ended, and already the territory was buried under 2 feet of snow. Jesse had seen bad winters before hell. He'd nearly died in one back in '74. But this one felt personal. Like the land itself wanted him gone. Maybe it did. Maybe everywhere wanted him gone. That's what 17 years of drifting taught a man. No place was home. No person stayed. He'd stopped expecting different. The sound came faint at first. Jesse thought it was the wind playing tricks the way it did when a man had been alone too long. But Smoke's ears twitched forward and she stopped walking entirely. "What is it, girl?" The mare snorted her breath, clouding white in the frozen air. Then Jesse heard it again. Clearer this time. Higher. A baby crying. "No." He shook his head. "No, that ain't possible." But Smoke was already turning, moving toward the sound without his guidance. Jesse let her go, his hand dropping to the rifle secured to his saddle. Out here sounds could be deceiving. He'd heard stories of bandits using all manner of tricks to ambush lone travelers. But this cry, it came again weaker now, more desperate. It cut through every defensive instinct he had. That wasn't bait. That was a child dying. "Go, Smoke! Go!" He kicked the mare into motion, and she surged forward through the snow, fighting the drifts with a determination that surprised him. The crying grew louder, then stopped entirely, and that silence was worse than any scream. Jesse spotted them 30 yards ahead. A dark shape against the white snow, motionless, half buried. He was off Smoke before she'd fully stopped, his boots sinking deep as he ran. The snow fought him, tried to drag him down, but he kept moving, kept pushing until he reached them. A woman. She lay curled on her side, her body wrapped around a bundle pressed tight to her chest. Her face was pale as bone. Her lips had gone blue. Frost clung to her eyelashes like tiny diamonds, and the bundle in her arms. Jesse dropped to his knees and touched the baby's cheek. The infant's eyes flew open, and she screamed. Not a healthy cry, a raw, hoarse sound that spoke of hours of crying, of a voice nearly gone. Jesus Christ! Jesse's hands moved before his brain caught up. He pressed 2 fingers to the woman's neck, searching for a pulse. There. Faint. Rapid. But there. "Ma'am." He shook her shoulder. "Ma'am, can you hear me?" Nothing. Her head lolled, revealing a dark bruise spreading across her jaw. Someone had hit her. Hit her hard. The baby screamed again, and Jesse's attention snapped back. The infant was dressed in good clothes, quality fabric, careful stitching, but the shawl wrapped around her was soaked through and frozen. She was maybe 2 years old, maybe less. Old enough to cry for her mama, young enough to die fast in this cold. "All right, little one." Jesse's voice came out rough. "All right, I got you." He tried to lift the baby, but the woman's arms were locked around her child with the desperate strength of a mother's last act. Even unconscious, she wouldn't let go. "Ma'am, I ain't gonna hurt her. I'm trying to help." No response. Jesse worked carefully, gently, prying frozen fingers loose. The woman whimpered a thin, broken sound that told him she was still fighting somewhere in there. Still holding on. That's good. You keep fighting. He finally freed the baby and pulled her against his chest. Both of you keep fighting. The child was light. Too light. When had she last eaten? When had she last been warm? Jesse shrugged out of his coat the heavy canvas duster that had seen him through countless storms and wrapped it around the baby. She was so small, she nearly disappeared inside it. Her crying had faded to weak whimpers. Her tiny hand somehow finding his thumb and gripping it with surprising strength. Something shifted in Jesse's chest. A feeling he didn't recognize, didn't want to recognize. He pushed it aside. Feelings didn't save lives. Action did. Smoke. The mayor was waiting patient as always. We got company, girl. Need you to be gentle. Getting the woman onto the horse was the hard part. Jesse laid the bundled baby in a hollow in the snow, hating every second of it, watching those blue eyes watch him, and return to the mother. She was lighter than he expected. Half-starved, probably. Her dress had been fine once, but now it was torn, stained, utterly inadequate for the Wyoming winter. Her feet were bare and bloody, the skin blackening with frostbite. She'd walked through this. Walked through a blizzard with a baby in her arms and no shoes on her feet. What the hell had she been running from? I don't know who you are, Jesse muttered as he lifted her. I don't know what happened, but I'm going to get you somewhere safe. You hear me? Her head fell against his shoulder. Through his shirt, he could feel the heat of fever burning beneath her frozen skin. He got her onto Smoke, securing her as best he could across the saddle. Then he retrieved the baby who'd gone terrifyingly quiet and climbed up behind them. Hold on. He kicked Smoke into a careful walk. Silver Creek ain't far. We're gonna make it. Another lie. But what else could he say about Matya? The ride was the longest of Jesse's life. He held the baby against his chest with one arm, the other managing the reins, and keeping the woman steady. Smoke moved carefully, picking her way through the snow, and Jesse talked the whole time. Words he didn't know he had. Words he never said to anyone. There's a doctor in Silver Creek. Doc Hawkins. Served in the war, my buddy told me. Seen everything. He'll know what to do. The baby's eyes were half closed now. Her breathing had gone shallow. No. Jesse jostled her gently. No, you don't quit on me. You hear, we're almost there. She didn't respond. You got a name, little one. His voice cracked. Your mama, she looks like she's got some fight in her. Bet you do too. Bet you're just as stubborn. The woman stirred against his arm. A moan escaped her cracked lips. That's right. You wake up. You tell me your name. You tell me what happened. But she didn't wake. She just burned with fever and moaned and whispered something that sounded like Rosie. Rosie. Jesse looked down at the baby. That your name, little one Rosie. The child's eyes opened at the sound, just for a second, just long enough to look at him with a clarity that made his breath catch. Then her eyes closed again, and Jesse rode harder. Silver Creek appeared through the snow like a mirage. Not much of a town. One main street, maybe 20 buildings. Most of them gray and weathered by the harsh Wyoming winters. But it had lights. It had people. It had a sign that read, S. Hawkins, M.D., swinging in the wind. Jesse rode straight down the main street, ignoring the stares from the few people brave enough to be outside. He must have made quite a sight. A snow-covered cowboy with an unconscious woman draped over his saddle and a bundled baby against his chest. Doc Hawkins. He pulled up in front of the medical office. Doc Hawkins, I need help. The door opened before he'd even dismounted. The man who emerged was older than Jesse expected. 60s maybe. Gray-haired and stocky, with the calm competence of someone who'd seen the worst humanity could offer and learned how to patch it back together. He took one look at Jesse's burden and moved. Bring them inside, now. They worked together, getting the woman down and carrying her into the warm office. She weighed nothing in their arms, nothing at all. What happened? Doc Hawkins was already examining her, checking pulse, breathing, lifting her eyelids. Found them in the snow, about 5 miles out. Jessie still held the baby. Couldn't seem to let go. Been out there a while. She's fevered. The baby's starving. Nettie! The doc called toward the back of the building. I need you. A woman appeared. 50s, rail thin, with sharp eyes and the kind of face that said she didn't suffer fools. She took in the scene without missing a beat. The baby needs milk, Jessie said. She's been crying for hours, maybe longer. Give her here. Nettie reached for the child. Jessie's arms tightened involuntarily. The baby's hand was still wrapped around his thumb, her tiny fingers holding on like he was the only solid thing in her world. Mr. Winters. Jessie Winters. Mr. Winters. Nettie's voice softened. I'll take care of her. I promise. Something in her face made him believe her. Slowly, carefully, he transferred the baby into her arms. The infant's fingers released his thumb, and Jessie felt the loss like a physical ache. What's her name? Nettie asked. Rosie, I think. Jessie swallowed hard. Her mama said it, before she went under again. Nettie nodded and disappeared into the back room, murmuring soft words to the child. Jessie turned to find Doc Hawkins working over the woman with grim efficiency. He'd stripped away her frozen dress, covering her with warm blankets, and was checking her injuries with hands that were gentle despite their size. Someone did this to her, Hawkins said quietly. That's what I figured. The bruise on her jaw, these marks on her wrists. Hawkins shook his head. And her feet, she walked through a blizzard with no shoes. That's not confusion or accident. That's desperation. She was running. Jessie's jaw tightened. Running from whoever did that to her. And she nearly died doing it. Hawkins pulled the blankets higher. Severe dehydration, hypothermia, possible infection. Her feet are badly frostbitten, she might lose some toes. He paused. But she's alive, thanks to you. Will she make it? Hawkins met his eyes. I don't know, son, but I'll do everything I can. From the back room came a different sound. Not crying, drinking. The hungry, desperate gulping of a child finally being fed. Jessie's knees nearly buckled with relief. The baby's feeding, Nettie called out. Poor little mite's starving, but she's taking the milk well. She'll be all right. What about the mother? Jessie found himself asking. What can I do? Hawkins studied him for a long moment. You've done plenty, Mr. Winters. Found them. Brought them in. The rest is up to me and the good Lord. I'm not much for the Lord. Jessie moved to a chair against the wall and sat heavily. But I can wait. You planning to stay involved in this? It was a fair question. Jessie had been heading through Silver Creek, not to it. He had no ties here, no reason to stay. His plan had been to collect wages from a cattle company agent and move on to Montana. That was before. I'll stay until she wakes up, Jessie heard himself say. Make sure they're all right. Hawkins' weathered face creased into something almost like a smile. That's good of you. Was it Jessie didn't feel good? He felt tired and cold, and oddly shaken, like the foundations of his life had just shifted, and he was still trying to find his footing. He'd spent 17 years avoiding exactly this kind of entanglement. 17 years running from responsibility, from connection, from anything that might anchor him in place. And now, because of a baby's cry in a blizzard, all of that careful distance was crumbling. He didn't know these people. He didn't know their names, their story, their troubles. He didn't know what kind of man left a woman and child to die in the snow, or what it would cost to stand between them and whatever was coming. He didn't know any of it. But when he'd looked down at that little girl Rosie, when her tiny hand had gripped his thumb and her blue eyes had focused on his face, something had changed. Something he couldn't name and couldn't ignore. The night stretched long and quiet. Nettie brought the baby out eventually, clean now fed wrapped in a soft wool blanket that swallowed her whole. She was sleeping peacefully, her tiny face relaxed in a way that made Jessie's chest ache. "She's a beautiful child," Nettie said softly. "Someone loved her. You can tell by her clothes. Quality work. Careful stitching. Someone loved her enough to run through a blizzard with her." Jessie's voice came out rough. "That takes more than love. That takes desperation." Nettie laid the baby in a small basket lined with cloth. "You were heading somewhere, Mr. Winters, before you found them." "Montana, maybe. It felt like a lifetime ago. Work on one of the big ranches. And now—" Jessie looked at the basket, at Rosie's sleeping face, at the door behind which Doc Hawkins was fighting to save a woman whose name he didn't even know. "Now I reckon Montana can wait." Nettie studied him with those sharp eyes. "You don't know what you're getting into. A woman running from someone, a man violent enough to do what was done to her, that's trouble. Real trouble." "I know. And you're staying anyway." "Yes, ma'am." She was quiet for a moment. Then, "There's a boarding house 2 doors down. I run it. Clean rooms, fair prices. You look like you could use a bed and a hot meal." "I appreciate that. Don't thank me yet." Nettie moved toward the door. "Trouble has a way of finding people who help strangers in trouble. You might come to regret stopping in that snow." "I might." Jessie's eyes stayed on the sleeping baby. "But I would have regretted riding past a hell of a lot more." Nettie paused at the door. For a second, something soft crossed her hard face. "My brother will take good care of them," she said. "Sam's the best doctor this side of the Rockies, even if he'd never say so himself. But Mr. Winters—" "Jessie. Jessie. When that woman wakes up, and I believe she will, there's going to be a story. A bad one, most likely. You should prepare yourself for that. I've heard bad stories before. Not like this one." Nettie's voice was quiet. "A woman doesn't walk barefoot through a blizzard unless what's behind her is worse than death. Whatever she's running from, it ain't over. It's just beginning." She left. Jessie sat alone in the lamplight, the baby sleeping in her basket, the woman fighting for her life in the other room. Outside, the blizzard still raged, but in here there was warmth, quiet, the smell of wood smoke and medicine. He should leave. Every instinct he'd honed over 17 years was screaming at him to go. Collect his horse ride out before the snow trapped him here, before this became his problem. But then Rosie made a small sound in her sleep, a soft coo of contentment. Her tiny hand curled and uncurled against the blanket, searching for something to hold. Jessie reached into the basket and offered his thumb. Her fingers wrapped around it immediately. Even in sleep, she held on tight. "What have you done to me, little one?" he whispered. She didn't answer, just held on. And Jesse Winters, the man who never stayed, who never let himself care, who'd built his whole life around leaving. Jesse Winters sat there in the lamplight and held a baby's hand and felt everything he'd believed about himself begin to crack. She woke with the dawn. Jesse had dozed in the chair, half sleeping, jerking awake at every sound. But he was fully alert when he heard the low moan from the back room, followed by Doc Hawkins' calm voice. "Easy now. You're safe. You're in Silver Creek in my medical office. You're safe." Jesse stood, his legs stiff from sitting, and moved toward the door. He stopped at the threshold, not wanting to crowd a woman who'd clearly been through hell. Inside, she was sitting up, barely. Her dark hair was matted and tangled, her face still pale, but her eyes were open. Brown eyes, he noticed. Warm and deep and full of fear. "My baby." Her voice was hoarse, barely more than a whisper. "Where's my baby?" "Right here." Jesse spoke before he could stop himself. "She's right here. Safe." Those brown eyes found him. For a long moment, she just stared at this stranger, standing in the doorway of a room she didn't recognize, claiming to know where her child was. "Rosie." Her voice cracked. "Her name is Rosie. Is she?" "She's sleeping in the front room. Fed warm, healthy. Jessie stepped aside so she could see past him to where the basket sat. Your little girl's a fighter. Takes after her mama, I reckon. The woman's face crumpled. Tears spilled down her cheeks. Tears she clearly didn't have the strength to stop. You found us, she breathed. You're the one who found us. Yes, ma'am. We were dying. I felt myself dying and I couldn't. Her voice broke completely. I prayed. I prayed someone would find Rosie. Even if I didn't make it. I prayed someone kind would find her. Jessie didn't know what to say to that. He'd never been anyone's answer to a prayer before. Never been anyone's anything, really. What's your name? He asked instead. So I know what to call you. She hesitated. Fear flickered in her eyes, not of him, he realized, but of the answer itself. Abigail, she said finally. Abigail Mercer. Jessie Winters, ma'am. He touched the brim of his hat. And I'm glad I was riding through when I was. Abigail's gaze went past him to the basket again. Can I see her? Please. Jessie looked at Doc Hawkins, who nodded. Let me help you, the doc said. You're not strong enough to walk yet. Together they supported Abigail to the front room. She was shaking with the effort, or maybe with emotion, but she kept moving until she reached the basket and looked down at her sleeping daughter. Rosie. She reached out with trembling fingers and touched the baby's cheek. My Rosie. The baby stirred at her mother's touch. Her eyes opened, and when she saw Abigail's face, she smiled. A pure, innocent smile that held no memory of cold or hunger or fear. Abigail broke down completely. She sobbed ugly, racking sobs that shook her whole body, and Jessie had to look away because watching felt like intruding on something sacred. The reunion of a mother and child who'd nearly lost each other to the cold and to whatever monster had driven them into it. Thank you, Abigail managed between sobs. Thank you, Mr. Winters. I can't ever. You don't owe me anything, ma'am. Jessie's voice came out rougher than he intended. Just focus on getting stronger. Focus on that little girl. She looked up at him then. Really looked. And something passed between them. Gratitude, yes, but something more. Recognition, maybe. Two broken people seeing each other for the first time. You saved us, she said quietly. I don't know why you stopped. Others didn't, but you did. Jessie felt cold all over. Others. Abigail's face changed. The gratitude was still there, but now it was shadowed by something darker. Fear, memory, shame. There were riders, she whispered. The day before you found us. 2 men. They saw us in the snow. I tried to call out, but my voice was gone. They looked right at us, and they kept riding. Jessie's hands curled into fists. They left you to die. Yes. Her voice was flat now, empty. But that's not the worst part. She looked down at Rosie again, and when she spoke, her words were so quiet, Jessie had to strain to hear them. My husband sent them. Thomas sent them to find me, and when they did, they rode away and left his wife and daughter to freeze. The room went silent. Jessie felt something shift in him, a cold, hard anger that settled into his bones, like it belonged there. Your husband, he repeated. Thomas Mercer. Abigail's voice shook. He'll come for us, Mr. Winters. He always comes, and when he does, then I'll be here. The words came out before Jessie could think, but once they were spoken, he knew he meant them. Every syllable. Abigail stared at him. You don't understand. Thomas is powerful, connected. He has money, lawyers, men who do what he says. You can't. I don't care what he has. Jessie stepped closer, and his voice dropped low. A man who sends riders to watch his wife and child die in the snow, that man don't deserve what he has. And he sure as hell don't deserve you. Mr. Winters? Jessie. She swallowed. Jessie, you've done enough. More than enough. But this isn't your fight. Jesse looked at her, this broken, brave woman who'd walked through a blizzard to save her daughter. He looked at Rosie, now awake and reaching for her mother. He thought about the choice he'd made when he heard that cry in the wind. Some choices once made couldn't be unmade. "Maybe not," he said slowly, "but I'm making it mine anyway." Abigail's eyes filled with fresh tears. But these were different. These held something that looked almost like hope. "Why?" she whispered. "Why would you do that for strangers?" Jesse didn't have a good answer. He'd asked himself the same question all night. All he knew was that when Rosie had gripped his thumb, when Abigail had prayed for someone kind, something had answered. Something inside him that he'd thought was dead. "Because I was there," he said finally. "Because I heard your daughter crying. And because a man don't ride past that. Not if he's any kind of man at all." Outside, the blizzard had finally stopped. Pale winter sunlight streamed through the windows, making the snow sparkle like scattered diamonds. A new day was dawning in Silver Creek. And Jesse Winters, for the first time in 17 years, had a reason to stay. The days that followed blurred together in a haze of healing and waiting. Abigail grew stronger slowly. Doc Hawkins kept her confined to bed, forcing broth and water into her, changing the bandages on her ruined feet. She'd lost 2 toes to the frostbite, the smallest ones on her left foot, but she'd kept the rest. A miracle, Hawkins called it. Abigail called it luck she didn't deserve. Jesse came every morning and every evening. He told himself it was just to check on them, to make sure they were safe. But the truth was simpler and harder to admit. He couldn't stay away. Rosie had claimed him somehow. The little girl's face would light up whenever he appeared, her arms reaching for him, her babbling taking on an excited pitch that made Nettie smile and shake her head. "She knows you," Abigail said one evening, watching Jesse bounce Rosie on his knee. "She's never taken to anyone like this. Not even—" She stopped. "Not even who?" Jesse asked quietly. "Her father." Abigail's voice went flat. "Thomas." She screamed every time he held her. Like she knew. Like she could sense what he was. Jesse's jaw tightened. "Tell me about him." "You don't want to know." "I do." He met her eyes. "I need to understand what we're dealing with." Abigail was quiet for a long moment. Rosie had fallen asleep against Jesse's chest. Her tiny hand curled in his shirt, and something about that image seemed to break something loose in her mother. "I was 19 when I married him," she began. "My father was a merchant in Boston. Good family, good name, but not wealthy. Thomas Mercer was everything my father wanted for me. Rich, established, respectable. Was he good to you at first? For a month?" Abigail's laugh was bitter. "Maybe less. Then I learned what respectable meant to Thomas. It meant I was his property, his possession. Something to be displayed and controlled and disciplined when I stepped out of line. He hit you." "He did more than hit me." Her voice dropped. "He broke me, Jesse. Piece by piece, year by year. He broke me until I didn't recognize myself anymore. Until I thought maybe I deserved it. Maybe I was as worthless as he said." Jesse's hands had gone still on Rosie's back. "You're not worthless. I know that now. It took me 7 years to remember it, but I know." Abigail's eyes met his. "Rosie taught me. The moment I held her, I knew I couldn't let her grow up watching what he did to me. I couldn't let her learn that love looked like bruises and fear. So you ran." "I tried. 3 times before this." She held up 3 fingers. "The first time he found me in a day. Dragged me back by my hair in front of the servants. The punishment lasted a week." Jesse felt sick. "The second time I got further. Made it to New York. Thought I was free." Abigail shook her head. "He has connections everywhere. Money buys loyalty, and Thomas has plenty of money. They brought me back, and he made sure I understood what happened to wives who embarrassed their husbands. And the third time, Rosie was 3 months old. Thomas had business out west, railroad investments in Dakota Territory. I saw my chance. Her voice quickened. A woman in Deadwood helped me, Mrs. Chen. She gave me supplies, arranged for me to join a wagon train heading to Montana. But you didn't make it. No. Abigail's face darkened. 3 days out, Thomas found us. Rode into camp all smiles and explanations. Told everyone I was his poor, confused wife suffering from hysteria after childbirth. Said he was taking me home for my own good. And they believed him. Why wouldn't they? He's respectable, well-dressed, well-spoken. Her voice turned bitter. I was just a hysterical woman with a newborn. The wagon master wouldn't go against him. No one would. Jesse's grip on Rosie tightened unconsciously. How'd you get away this time? He took us back toward Deadwood. But he was so angry, Jesse, drunk on his own righteousness. We stopped to camp that first night and he drank himself unconscious. She paused. I waited until he was out, took Rosie, and I ran. Into the blizzard. I didn't know it would hit so fast. I just knew I had to get away before he woke up. Had to give Rosie a chance. Tears were streaming down her face now. I walked all night, all the next day. No food, no water, no shoes. I lost them in the mud when I was running. I just kept walking. Until you couldn't anymore. Until my body gave out. Abigail wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. The last thing I remember is lying down in the snow holding Rosie, praying that someone kind would find her, even if I didn't make it. Jesse was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was rough. Those riders. The ones who saw you and kept going. Thomas sent them to track me. When they found me dying, they must have decided the cold would finish what he started. Her voice broke. They left us to die, Jesse. Left a baby to freeze to death. I'm going to find them. The words came out cold and hard. And when I do... No. Abigail reached out and gripped his arm. No, Jesse. That's not who you are. I won't let Thomas turn you into something violent. I'm already something violent. He met her eyes. You think a man survives 17 years on the frontier without blood on his hands? I've killed before, Abigail. Killed men who deserved it. Those riders deserve it too. Maybe they do. But I didn't pray for a killer to find my daughter. I prayed for someone kind. Her grip tightened. You're kind, Jesse Winters. Don't let my husband take that from you. Something shifted in Jesse's chest. That feeling again, the one he couldn't name. The one that had started when Rosie gripped his thumb and wouldn't let go. He's coming, he said quietly. Thomas, he's going to come looking. Yes. And when he does, Abigail's chin lifted. Then I'll face him. I'm done running. You won't face him alone. Jesse, I mean it. He leaned forward, careful not to wake Rosie. I don't know what this is. I don't know why I can't walk away from you and this little girl, but I can't. And I won't let him take you back to that life. You don't owe us anything. This ain't about owing. Jesse's voice dropped. This is about choosing. And I'm choosing to stay. Abigail stared at him. Her eyes were still wet with tears, but something new flickered in their depths. Something that looked almost like hope. Why? She whispered. Why would you do that for strangers? Jesse looked down at Rosie sleeping peacefully against his chest. He thought about 17 years of drifting, of running, of never letting himself care about anyone or anything. Because you're not strangers anymore, he said simply. Not to me. The next morning, everything changed. Jesse was at the livery stable negotiating work with the owner, a weathered black man named Luther Crane, when Sheriff Wade Hollister appeared in the doorway. You Jesse Winters? Jesse straightened slowly. Depends on who's asking. Sheriff of Silver Creek. Hollister stepped inside. Got a visitor in town. Fancy carriage, expensive suit, asking questions about a woman and a baby. Jesse's blood went cold. Where is he? Hotel across from the courthouse. But Winters? The sheriff held up a hand. He's got paperwork. Marriage certificate, birth certificate. Says the woman you brought in is his wife and the baby is his daughter. That woman walked through a blizzard to get away from him. I figured as much. Hollister's eyes were sharp. I've been a lawman long enough to know the difference between a worried husband and a dangerous one. This man's dangerous. So what do? Legally, not much. A man's got a right to his wife and child. That's the law. The sheriff paused. But the law and justice ain't always the same thing. And I tend to lean toward justice. Jesse felt a spark of hope. You'll help us. I'll do what I can. But you need to understand something, Winters. Men like this rich connected, used to getting what they want, they don't fight fair. He'll use the law like a weapon. He'll paint Mrs. Mercer as crazy or unfit. He'll make himself the victim. Then we need a plan. You need more than a plan. Hollister moved closer, lowering his voice. You need to give her legal standing. Right now, she's his wife, running from her lawful husband. But if she was someone else's wife... The implication hit Jesse like a punch. You're suggesting I marry her. I'm suggesting you consider all options. The sheriff shrugged. A new marriage properly witnessed and recorded would complicate his claim considerably. Wouldn't make it disappear, but it would buy time. Time for her to establish residency, gather evidence, build a case. She barely knows me. She knows you saved her life. She knows you've been at her bedside every day. She knows her daughter lights up when she sees you. Hollister's eyes softened slightly. Sometimes that's enough to build something real. Jesse's mind was racing. Marriage. He'd thought about it once years ago with a girl named Sarah who died of fever before they could exchange vows. After that, he'd sworn off the idea entirely. No ties. No commitments. No one to lose. But now, I need to talk to her, he said. This has to be her choice. Make it fast. Hollister headed for the door. Our friend at the hotel is asking questions all over town. It won't be long before he finds out where she's staying. Jesse ran. He burst into Doc Hawkins' office to find Abigail already dressed sitting in a chair with Rosie in her lap. Her face was pale, and he knew immediately that she'd already heard. He's here, she said flatly. Thomas is here. I know. Jesse crossed to her, dropping to one knee so they were at eye level. Abigail, listen to me. There's a way to fight this, but it's going to sound crazy. Nothing sounds crazy anymore. Marry me. Abigail went absolutely still. Not for love, Jesse said quickly. Not because I expect anything from you. But if you're my wife, legally married, properly documented, Thomas can't just take you. He'd have to fight it in court. It would buy us time. Jesse, I know it's insane. I know we've only known each other for a week. But I'm offering you protection, Abigail. Real protection. A name he can't take from you. Her eyes searched his face. You'd do that, bind yourself to a woman you barely know with a dangerous husband who'll try to destroy you. I'd do it, Jesse said quietly, because I can't watch him take you back. I can't watch Rosie go back to that house with that man. And because... He stopped. Because what? Because somewhere in the last week you stopped being strangers. His voice roughened. I don't know what this is, Abigail. I don't know what it means, but I know I can't walk away. Not from you. Not from her. Rosie chose that moment to reach for Jesse, her tiny hands grabbing at his shirt. He lifted her automatically, settling her against his chest, and she nestled there like she belonged. Abigail watched them, tears streaming down her face. Yes, she whispered. Yes, yes, I'll marry you. She stood swaying slightly. Not because I have no choice, I do. I could run again. I could keep running forever. But I'm tired, Jesse. I'm so tired of being afraid. You don't have to be afraid anymore. I know. She reached out and touched his face the first time she'd touched him voluntarily. Because you're here. Because you stopped when everyone else rode past. The door crashed open. Thomas Mercer filled the doorway. He was exactly as Abigail had described. Tall, well-groomed, expensive suit, despite the frontier setting. But his face wasn't the face of a respectable businessman. It was twisted with rage veins standing out on his forehead, eyes wild with fury. Clara. His voice was ice. Did you really think you could hide from me? Jesse moved immediately, putting himself between Thomas and Abigail, Rosie still in his arms. You need to leave. And who the hell are you? Thomas's eyes swept over Jesse with contempt. The latest fool my wife has seduced into helping her. I'm the man who found your wife and daughter dying in the snow. Jesse's voice was deadly calm. The snow you left them in. Thomas's mask flickered, just for a second. Then it was back. I don't know what lies Clara has told you, but she's not well. Hasn't been since the baby was born. Hysteria. Delusions. The doctors in Boston could explain it better than I can. The only thing I need explained is why a man abandons his family in a blizzard. I didn't. Thomas stepped forward. I've been searching for her for weeks. Worried sick. And now I find her here with some cowboy spreading lies about me. They ain't lies. Abigail's voice came from behind Jesse, stronger than he'd ever heard it. Every word is true, Thomas. Every bruise, every broken bone, every time you made me feel like I was worthless. Clara, darling, you're confused. My name is Abigail. She stepped around Jesse to face her husband directly. You don't get to rename me anymore. You don't get to rewrite what happened. I know what you did, and now everyone else will too. Thomas's face went purple. You ungrateful! He lunged forward. Jesse's fist connected with his jaw before he'd taken 2 steps. Thomas went down hard, crashing into Doc Hawkins' instrument table, scattering medical equipment across the floor. You touch her. Jesse said, his voice low and dangerous. And I'll kill you. Right here. Right now. And I won't lose a second of sleep over it. Thomas scrambled to his feet, blood dripping from a split lip. His eyes had gone cold now. Calculating. The rage was still there, but it was controlled. You'll regret that, he said quietly. Both of you. I have lawyers. I have connections. I have the law on my side. The law says a man can't beat his wife, Sheriff Hollister said from the doorway. He'd arrived during the confrontation, one hand resting on his gun. The law says a man can't abandon his family to die. You want to talk about law, Mr. Mercer? Let's talk about law. This is a family matter. It's assault. Hollister nodded at Jesse's bloody knuckles, then at Thomas's split lip. You came into this office and attempted to attack a woman under medical care. I could arrest you right now. I didn't. I saw what I saw. The sheriff's voice was flat. Now you can leave Silver Creek quietly and let the courts sort this out. Or you can keep making threats and spend the night in my jail. Your choice. Thomas looked from Hollister to Jesse to Abigail. His jaw worked silently, processing the fact that for the first time in his life, money and status weren't going to make this problem disappear. This isn't over, he said finally. I'll return with proper documentation. Lawyers. A court order if necessary. And when I do, Sheriff, you'll have no choice but to hand them over. Maybe, Hollister said, but that's not today. Today you leave. Thomas straightened his coat with deliberate calm. When he looked at Abigail, his smile was the coldest thing Jesse had ever seen. I never lose, Clara, he said softly. Never. You know that. Whatever you've found here, whatever protection you think this cowboy can offer, it won't be enough. I'll take back what's mine. And when I do, you'll pay for every moment of defiance. He left. The room was silent for a long moment. Then, Abigail's legs gave out, and Jesse caught her before she hit the floor, Rosie still secure in his other arm. "It's all right," he murmured. "He's gone. He's gone. He'll be back." Abigail was shaking violently. "He'll come back with lawyers and court orders and we'll be ready." Jesse helped her to a chair, then knelt in front of her, Rosie between them. "Listen to me, Abigail. That man just made a mistake. He showed his hand too early. Now we know what he's planning to do. Does it matter? He has everything. Money, power, the law. He doesn't have you." Jesse caught her face in his free hand, forcing her to meet his eyes. "He doesn't have Rosie, and he doesn't have this town. This town doesn't even know me. They will." Doc Hawkins spoke for the first time. He'd been watching silently from the corner. "They'll know the woman who walked through a blizzard to save her daughter. They'll know the mother who refused to give up. And they'll know the kind of man who left them to die." "Doc's right," Hollister added. "Silver Creek isn't Boston, Mrs. Mercer. Out here, people make their own judgments, and I've already made mine." Abigail looked around the room at the sheriff who'd taken her side, at the doctor who'd saved her life, at the cowboy who'd promised to protect her. "You really think we can win?" she whispered. "I think we can fight," Jesse said. "And sometimes that's the same thing." Rosie grabbed his thumb again, that same grip, that same surprising strength, and Jesse felt something settle in his chest. Certainty. Purpose. Whatever was coming, they'd face it together. The wedding happened 3 days later. Judge Marcus Whitfield, the circuit judge passing through Silver Creek, agreed to perform the ceremony after hearing an abbreviated version of events. He was an old man with kind eyes and a healthy skepticism of wealthy men who treated their wives like property. "This legal?" he asked Hollister privately. "Legal enough to make trouble for anyone who wants to challenge it." "Good enough for me." The ceremony was simple. Nettie served as witness. Doc Hawkins gave Abigail away, a symbolic gesture that made her cry. Luther Crane came from the livery to watch, along with a handful of townspeople who'd heard whispers of the story. Abigail wore a borrowed dress, blue, simple, beautiful. Her hair was pinned up, and the bruises had faded enough that she looked almost like the woman she might have been before Thomas broke her. Jesse wore his cleanest shirt and couldn't stop staring at her. "Do you, Jesse Cole Winters, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife?" "I do." "Do you, Abigail Rose Mercer, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband?" A pause. The weight of the question hung in the air, not just a legal formality, but a choice, a declaration of independence. "I do." "Then by the power vested in me, I pronounce you husband and wife." Jesse kissed her, gently, briefly aware of everything she'd been through. But when he pulled back, Abigail was smiling, the first real smile he'd seen from her. "Mrs. Winters," he said quietly, "got a nice ring to it." "Mr. Winters," she touched his face. "Thank you. For everything." Rosie, held by Nettie, chose that moment to demand attention. Jesse took her, settling her against his chest, and the three of them stood together for the first time as a family. Legal. Documented. Real. Whatever Thomas Mercer threw at them now, they'd face it as husband and wife. The celebration was modest, but warm. Nettie had arranged a small reception at her boarding house, cake and coffee, nothing elaborate. But the people who came seemed genuine in their congratulations, and for a few hours the shadow of Thomas Mercer retreated. That night, in the room Nettie had prepared for them, Abigail and Jesse faced the reality of their situation. "I can sleep in the chair," Jesse offered immediately, "or on the floor, whatever makes you comfortable." "Jesse." Abigail caught his hand. "I know this marriage is unconventional, but I want you to know something." "What's that?" "I'm grateful. More grateful than I can say. But I don't want you to think I'm just using you for protection." She squeezed his hand. "When I said yes, when I stood up there and took those vows, I meant them." "Abigail." "I don't love you," she said quickly. "Not yet. I don't know if I can ever love anyone again. Thomas destroyed something in me, and I don't know if it can be fixed. I'm not asking for love. I know, but you deserve it." Her eyes were bright with tears. "You deserve a wife who can give you everything a wife should, not a broken woman with a child and a dangerous past." Jesse was quiet for a moment. Then he reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "You want to know what I deserve?" he asked softly. "I deserve to make my own choices. And I chose you, Abigail. I chose Rosie. Not because you're perfect or because this is easy, but because when I heard your daughter crying in that storm, something woke up in me that I thought was dead." "What do you mean?" "I've been drifting for 17 years. No home, no family, no purpose. Just moving from one place to another, trying not to feel anything." His voice roughened. "Then I found you. And suddenly, all that drifting made sense. Like I was supposed to end up here, supposed to find you." Abigail's tears spilled over. "Jesse, we don't have to figure everything out tonight. We don't have to be anything more than partners right now. But I want you to know." He took a breath. "I'm not going anywhere. Not ever. Whatever comes, we face it together." She rose up on her toes and kissed him. Not like the ceremony, this was real. Soft and tentative and full of unspoken promises. When she pulled back, she was still crying, but she was smiling too. "Together," she whispered. Rosie slept in her cradle between them that night. Abigail and Jesse lay on opposite sides of the bed, maintaining careful distance. But somewhere in the darkness their hands found each other. They fell asleep, holding on. Morning brought trouble. Jesse was just finishing breakfast when Luther Crane appeared at the boarding house, his weathered face grim. "Riders coming in from the east," Luther said quietly. 3 of them, well armed. Jesse's blood went cold. "Thomas." "Don't think so, but they're asking questions. About the woman. About you." "Where's Abigail?" "Doc's office. Nettie took her and the baby there when she saw them coming." Smart woman. Jesse grabbed his rifle and headed for the door. The 3 riders were waiting on Main Street when he emerged. Hard men with harder eyes, the kind Jesse recognized from his years on the frontier. Hired guns. Men who did dirty work for dirty money. Jesse Winters. The lead rider was tall and lean, with a scar running down his left cheek. "Who's asking?" "Name's Rollins. My employer wants a word with you." "Your employer can go to hell." Rollins smiled without warmth. "That's not very friendly, Mr. Winters, especially considering our employer just wants to make you an offer." "What kind of offer?" "The generous kind." Rollins leaned forward in his saddle. "Walk away. Leave town tonight. $500 waiting for you in Cheyenne. Nobody gets hurt." "And if I don't?" The smile vanished. "Then things get considerably less friendly." Jesse felt the weight of his rifle in his hands. He was fast enough. But 3 against 1 in the open street. Those weren't good odds. "You tell your employer," Jesse said slowly, "that my wife and daughter aren't for sale, and neither am I." "Your wife?" Rollins laughed. "That's rich. She's Thomas Mercer's wife friend. Has been for 7 years. That little ceremony you had doesn't change facts." "Facts change all the time out here, and the fact right now is that you're outnumbered." Rollins's eyes flicked over Jesse's shoulder. Jesse didn't turn, but he heard the footsteps. Sheriff Hollister. Luther Crane. Doc Hawkins. More townspeople who'd been watching from doorways and windows now emerging with weapons in hand. "Silver Creek takes care of its own," Hollister said calmly. "And Mrs. Winters is one of ours now." Rollins assessed the situation with a professional's eye. Whatever conclusion he reached, it wasn't in his favor. "This ain't over," he said quietly. "Not by a long shot." "Maybe not," Jesse replied. "But it's over for today, right out." For a long moment, nobody moved. The tension stretched tight enough to snap. Then Rollins wheeled his horse around, and the three riders disappeared down the road. Jesse let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. "Thank you," he said to the crowd. "All of you." "Don't thank us yet," Hollister said grimly. "That was just the first wave. Mercer's testing our defenses, seeing what we're made of. What comes next?" "Next." The sheriff's eyes were hard. "Next, he brings the law." 2 weeks passed in tense silence. Jesse kept watching the horizon, waiting for the storm he knew was coming. Abigail threw herself into recovery, walking more each day, despite the pain in her damaged feet, forcing herself to grow stronger. Rosie grew and laughed and remained blissfully unaware of the danger circling her family. The summons arrived on a gray December morning. A territorial marshal rode into Silver Creek with official documents bearing the seal of the Dakota Territorial Court. Jesse and Abigail were ordered to appear before Judge Augustus Crane in Rapid City in 3 weeks' time. Thomas Mercer was contesting their marriage, claiming Abigail as his legal wife and demanding custody of their daughter. "This is bad," Sheriff Hollister said, scanning the papers in Doc Hawkins' office. "Crane is old school, traditional, believes in the sanctity of original marriage vows." "Meaning he'll side with Thomas," Jesse said flatly. "Meaning he'll lean that way, yes." Hollister handed the summons back. Marcus Whitfield's ceremony was legal, but Crane might not see it that way. He might rule that Abigail's first marriage takes precedence. Abigail had gone pale. Rosie squirmed in her arms, sensing her mother's distress. "So that's it." Her voice shook. "Thomas wins. He just takes us back." "Not necessarily." A new voice came from the doorway. A young man stepped inside, early 30s, sharp eyes, intensity radiating from every pore. "Samuel Brennan. I practice law in Deadwood. Sheriff Hollister sent word about your situation." Jesse sized him up. "You think you can help? I think I can fight." Brennan moved into the room, his gaze settling on Abigail. "Mrs. Winters, I've heard some of your story. I'd like to hear the rest." "Why?" Abigail asked warily. "Why would you take this case?" "Because I've spent my career watching powerful men use the law as a weapon against people who can't fight back." Brennan's jaw tightened. "I'm tired of watching them win." Over the next hour, Abigail told her story again. The beatings, the broken bones, the escape attempts, the abandonment in the blizzard. Brennan listened without interruption, taking notes in a leather journal, his expression growing darker with each revelation. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "Mrs. Winters," he said finally, "I won't lie to you. This case is difficult. Thomas Mercer has money connections and legal precedent on his side, but he also has a weakness." "What weakness?" "You." Brennan leaned forward. "If you're willing to testify, to stand in that courtroom and tell Judge Crane exactly what Thomas did to you, we have a chance. Abuse is grounds for annulment in some jurisdictions. It's our best argument." Abigail's face went white. "Testify, you mean stand up there and talk about—" "I know it's asking a lot." "You don't know anything." Her voice cracked. "You're asking me to relive every horror, every humiliation with Thomas sitting right there watching me. You're asking me to expose my deepest wounds to strangers. I'm asking you to fight for your daughter." Brennan's voice was gentle but firm. "Without your testimony, our case is significantly weaker. We'd be relying on medical evidence and witness statements. That might not be enough." Jesse reached for Abigail's hand. "You don't have to decide now." "Yes, she does." Brennan stood. "We have 3 weeks to prepare. That's not much time to build a case against a man like Thomas Mercer. I need to know today whether you're willing to testify." Abigail looked at Rosie, at her daughter's innocent face, her trusting eyes. She thought about what would happen if they lost. Rosie growing up in that house, watching her mother be beaten, learning that love meant fear. "I'll do it," she whispered. "God help me, I'll do it." The 3 weeks before the trial were a blur of preparation. Brennan drilled Abigail relentlessly, teaching her how to answer questions clearly, how to resist emotional manipulation, how to maintain composure under attack. Doc Hawkins compiled his medical records into a devastating file documenting the evidence of abuse. Nettie and Luther and a dozen other townspeople prepared statements attesting to Abigail's character and condition when she'd arrived. But despite all the preparation, the tension mounted. Abigail's nightmares returned with a vengeance. She'd wake screaming, drenched in sweat, and Jesse would hold her until the shaking stopped. Some nights, she couldn't sleep at all. She'd pace the small room, checking on Rosie every few minutes, as if afraid her daughter might vanish. "I can't do this," she said one night, her voice breaking. "Jesse, I can't stand in that courtroom and face him." "Yes, you can." "You don't understand. The things he did to me." She wrapped her arms around herself. "I've never told anyone everything. Not even you. There are things I can't say out loud. Things that would destroy me." Jesse pulled her close. "Then don't say them. Tell the court what you can. That's enough." "What if it isn't? What if they still rule in his favor? Then we run." The words came out before Jesse could stop them. "We take Rosie, and we disappear. Change our names. Start over somewhere. Thomas can never find us." "You'd do that? Become a fugitive?" "I'd do anything." He tilted her face up to meet his eyes. "Anything to keep you and Rosie safe. You hear me? Anything." Abigail kissed him then. Not the gentle, tentative kisses they'd shared before. This was desperate, hungry, full of fear and need, and something that might have been love. When they finally broke apart, she was crying. "I don't deserve you," she whispered. "Let me decide what you deserve." The night before they left for Rapid City, Abigail made a decision. She found Jesse in Nettie's parlor, going over Brennan's notes one more time. Rosie was asleep upstairs. The house was quiet. "I need to tell you something," she said. Jesse looked up, instantly alert. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong. She sat beside him, taking his hands in hers. "If tomorrow goes badly, if Thomas wins, I want you to know these past few weeks have been the happiest of my life." "Abigail." "Let me finish." Her grip tightened. "I married you for protection. I told myself that's all it was. But somewhere along the way," she took a shaky breath, "somewhere along the way, I started wanting more." Jesse's heart was pounding. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I love you." The words came out in a rush. "I didn't think I could. I thought Thomas had killed that part of me. But you brought it back, Jesse. With your kindness, your patience, the way you look at Rosie like she's your own daughter." "She is my daughter, in every way that matters." "I know." Tears were streaming down Abigail's face. "And you're my husband, in every way that matters. I wanted you to know that before tomorrow. Whatever happens in that courtroom, what we have is real." Jesse cupped her face in his hands. "I love you too. Have for a while now. Just didn't want to rush you by saying it. You can say it now. Say it as often as you want." He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. And when he pulled back, he saw something in her eyes he'd never seen before. Trust. Complete and absolute trust. "We're going to win tomorrow," he said quietly. "We're going to fight and we're going to win. And then, we're going to build a life together. A real life. You, me, and Rosie. Promise. Promise." They held each other through the night, drawing strength from the contact. And when morning came, they rose together to face whatever waited in Rapid City. The courthouse was larger than Jesse expected. Stone columns, formal architecture, the kind of building designed to intimidate. They'd arrived the day before, settling into a modest hotel while Brennan made final preparations. Now, standing on the steps, Jesse felt the weight of what they were about to do. "You ready?" he asked Abigail. "No." She straightened her spine. "But I'm doing it anyway." Inside the courtroom was already filling. Thomas Mercer sat at one table, with two expensive suited lawyers looking every inch the respectable businessman. When Abigail entered, his eyes tracked her like a predator watching prey. Jesse put himself between them. "Don't look at him," he murmured. "Look at Brennan. Look at me. Look at anyone but him." They took their seats. Rosie was safely with Nettie back at the hotel, too young for courtroom drama and too important to risk. Judge Augustus Crane entered, and the room rose. He was exactly as Hollister had described, stern traditional, with the rigid bearing of a man who valued order above all else. His eyes swept the courtroom with cold assessment. "Be seated. We're here in the matter of Mercer versus Winters. Mr. Pemberton, you may present the petitioner's case." Thomas's lead lawyer rose. He was smooth, practiced, every word calculated for maximum impact. "Your Honor, this is a simple case of a husband trying to recover his wife and child from an unlawful situation. Mrs. Mercer and I use her legal name, not the fictitious one she's adopted, has been suffering from a form of hysteria since the birth of their daughter. In her confused state, she fled from her husband's care and fell under the influence of a frontier cowboy who saw an opportunity." Jesse's fists clenched. Brennan put a warning hand on his arm. "The marriage between Jesse Winters and Clara Mercer is invalid because Clara was already married. She is legally Mrs. Thomas Mercer and has been for 7 years. Their daughter Rose Mercer is Mr. Mercer's legal heir. We ask the court to annul the fraudulent marriage and return both wife and child to their rightful home." Crane's expression was unreadable. "Mr. Brennan, your response." Brennan stood slowly. "Your Honor, the petitioner would have you believe this is a simple case of marital dispute. It is not. This is a case of systematic abuse, attempted murder, and a brave woman's desperate flight to save her child." Murmurs rippled through the gallery. Thomas's face darkened. "Over the next few days, we will present evidence that Thomas Mercer subjected his wife to years of physical and emotional violence. We will show medical documentation of injuries consistent with sustained abuse. And we will demonstrate that Mrs. Winters' marriage to my client was entered into freely and with legitimate intent, not as a fraud, but as the only means of escape from a man who had already tried to kill her." "Objection." Pemberton was on his feet. "Those allegations are outrageous and unsubstantiated." "They will be substantiated by testimony and evidence," Brennan replied calmly. "Objection overruled. Continue, Mr. Brennan." The battle was joined. The first day was a skirmish. Pemberton presented character witnesses for Thomas business associates who testified to his respectability, church members who praised his charity work. Each one painted a picture of an upstanding citizen wronged by his unstable wife. But Brennan was ready. "Mr. Harrison," he asked one of Thomas's business partners, "did you ever visit the Mercer home?" "On occasion, yes." "Did you ever observe any tension between Mr. and Mrs. Mercer?" "Occasionally, perhaps, but all marriages have tensions." "Did you ever see Mrs. Mercer with unexplained injuries, a black eye perhaps, a bruised jaw?" Harrison shifted uncomfortably. "I may have noticed some. I assumed she was clumsy." "Clumsy." Brennan let the word hang. "How often would you say Mrs. Mercer was clumsy, Mr. Harrison?" I didn't keep count." "Would you say it was a regular occurrence, monthly, weekly?" "Objection. Badgering the witness." "Withdrawn. No further questions." The damage was done. Jesse saw doubt flickering on some faces in the gallery. The second day brought Doc Hawkins to the stand. "Dr. Hawkins, you treated Mrs. Winters when she was brought to your office. Can you describe her condition?" "Severe hypothermia, dehydration, fever, frostbite so severe she lost 2 toes." Hawkins' voice was steady. "She'd walked through a blizzard with no shoes carrying an infant. It's a miracle she survived." "Did you observe any other injuries?" "Yes. Bruising on her jaw consistent with a forceful blow. Marks on her wrists consistent with being restrained. Healed fractures in 3 ribs that suggest previous injuries." "In your medical opinion, Were these injuries consistent with the petitioner's claim that Mrs. Winters is simply clumsy? No. Hawkins's eyes went to Thomas. These injuries are consistent with sustained domestic abuse. I've seen it before, unfortunately. The pattern is unmistakable. Thomas's lawyers attacked savagely on cross-examination, questioning Hawkins' credentials, suggesting the injuries could have occurred during Abigail's flight through the wilderness. But the doctor held firm, and when he stepped down, the doubt in the gallery had grown. The third day was Abigail's turn. She rose on shaking legs, Jessie's hand squeezing hers one last time before she approached the witness stand. The oath was administered. She sat her back straight, her face pale but determined. "Mrs. Winters," Brennan began gently, "please tell the court about your marriage to Thomas Mercer." And she did. She told them about the first month of happiness, the gradual revelation of Thomas's true nature. She told them about the first slap that became a punch, that became a pattern. She described nights locked in her room, days of walking on eggshells, the slow erosion of her identity, until she barely recognized herself. The courtroom was silent. "He told me I was worthless," Abigail said, her voice breaking. "He told me no one would ever want me. He told me I deserved everything he did because I was a failure as a wife." "Did you believe him?" "For a long time, yes." Tears streamed down her face. "He broke me down so completely that I thought he was right. I thought I deserved the pain." "What changed?" "Rosie." Abigail's voice strengthened. "When I held my daughter for the first time, I knew I couldn't let her grow up watching what he did to me. I couldn't let her learn that love looked like bruises. So you tried to leave. 3 times before this. Each time he found me. Each time the punishment was worse. And this time, the time that brought you to Silver Creek." Abigail took a shaky breath. "We were in Dakota Territory. Thomas had business with the railroad. I saw my chance. A woman in Deadwood helped me escape, gave me supplies arranged for me to join a wagon train heading to Montana." "But you didn't make it to Montana." "No. Thomas found us 3 days out. Rode into camp all smiles, told everyone I was his hysterical wife who needed to be taken home." Her voice hardened. "The wagon master believed him. No one would help me." "What happened then?" "Thomas took us back toward Deadwood. That night he got drunk, passed out. I took Rosie and ran into the darkness, into the blizzard, without shoes. I lost them in the mud. I couldn't go back for them. I just had to keep moving. And then, I walked all night, all the next day. No food, no water, just Rosie in my arms. When my body finally gave out, I lay down in the snow and prayed." Abigail's eyes found Jessie in the gallery. "I prayed that someone kind would find my daughter. Even if I didn't survive, I prayed someone kind would save her. And Mr. Winters found you." "Yes." A small smile touched her lips. "He heard Rosie crying. And unlike others, he didn't ride past." Brennan paused, letting the testimony sink in. "Mrs. Winters, you mentioned that others rode past. Can you explain? The day before Jessie found us, 2 riders saw us in the snow. I was conscious enough to see them. I tried to call out, but my voice was gone. They looked right at us, and they kept riding." Gasps from the gallery. Even Judge Crane's expression flickered. "Do you know who those riders were?" "Thomas sent them. They were tracking me. When they found me dying, they left me there." Her voice went cold. "They left me and my baby to freeze to death." Objection. Pemberton was on his feet. "There's no evidence that my client had anything to do with those riders." "We'll provide that evidence, Your Honor," Brennan said calmly. "I have signed statements from 2 men currently in custody in Deadwood who confessed to being hired by Thomas Mercer to track his wife and report on her location." The courtroom erupted. Crane's gavel hammered down. "Order! Order in this court!" Thomas had gone white. For the first time, his mask of respectability showed cracks. "When did you obtain these statements?" Crane demanded. "Yesterday evening, Your Honor. The men were apprehended attempting to leave the territory. When faced with accessory to murder charges, they were remarkably forthcoming. Pemberton was scrambling. "Your Honor, this is highly irregular. We need time to examine these statements." "You'll have time during your cross-examination, Mr. Pemberton, but these statements will be admitted as evidence." Crane's eyes went to Thomas. "Mr. Mercer, you would be wise to remain silent at this juncture." The cross-examination was brutal. Pemberton attacked every aspect of Abigail's testimony, questioning her memory, her motivations, her sanity. He implied she'd exaggerated the abuse, fabricated the story about the Riders, seduced Jesse into a fraudulent marriage. Through it all, Abigail held firm. "Mrs. Mercer, Winters," she corrected quietly. "My name is Abigail Winters." "Mrs. Mercer," Pemberton repeated deliberately. "Isn't it true that you abandoned your husband without provocation, that you kidnapped his daughter and fled into the wilderness with no plan?" "My plan was to survive. My plan was to give my daughter a chance at a life without violence." "You claim my client abused you, yet you stayed with him for 7 years. Why didn't you leave sooner if things were so terrible?" Abigail's eyes went hard. "Have you ever been trapped? Mr. Pemberton, have you ever been so beaten down, so isolated, so convinced of your own worthlessness that escape seemed impossible? I stayed because I was afraid. I stayed because Thomas told me no one would believe me, and he was right. No one did. Until now." No further questions. Abigail stepped down, trembling but unbroken. Jesse caught her as she reached him, holding her tight. "You did it," he whispered. "You did it." It's not over yet. It wasn't, but the tide had turned. The final arguments were the next morning. Pemberton made an impassioned plea for the sanctity of marriage, the rights of a father to his child, the dangers of setting a precedent that allowed wives to simply walk away from their husbands. Brennan's closing was quieter, but no less powerful. "Your Honor, we've heard a lot about legal rights and marital obligations, but this case isn't really about law. It's about justice, about whether a woman who has been beaten, terrorized, and nearly murdered has the right to seek safety, about whether a child deserves to grow up free from violence." He paused, letting his words settle. Thomas Mercer is a wealthy man, a connected man, a man who has used his power to control and abuse his wife for 7 years. When she finally found the courage to escape, he sent men to track her down, men who left her and her infant daughter to die in a blizzard. His voice hardened. The law Mr. Pemberton cites was written to protect families. But what family was a Thomas Mercer protecting when he beat his wife? What family was he protecting when he abandoned her to freeze the marriage he claims to honor was a prison? The home he wants to take her back to is a torture chamber. Brennan turned to face the judge directly. Abigail Winters came to this territory seeking freedom. She found a man who offered her protection without demanding anything in return. She found a community that rallied around her instead of turning away. She found the courage to stand in this courtroom and tell her truth, knowing Thomas Mercer would use every weapon at his disposal to destroy her. His voice dropped. "That is not a hysterical woman, Your Honor. That is a survivor, and she deserves to remain free." Judge Crane was silent for a long moment. "This court will recess until tomorrow morning, at which time I will deliver my ruling." The night was the longest of Jesse's life. He and Abigail sat together in their hotel room, Rosie sleeping between them, neither able to speak about what might happen. The stakes were too high, the fear too present. "If we lose," Abigail said finally, "I want you to take Rosie." "What? Take her. Run. Don't look back." Her eyes were fierce. "Promise me, Jesse, if the ruling goes against us, you take our daughter and you disappear." "I'm not leaving you." "You have to. I can survive Thomas. I've survived him before. But Rosie..." Her voice broke. "I can't let him have her. I can't let her grow up in that house. Promise me." Jesse's jaw tightened. Every instinct screamed against it. But he saw the desperation in Abigail's eyes, the mother's terror that transcended her own survival. "I promise," he said quietly. "But it won't come to that. We're going to win." "How do you know?" "Because we have something Thomas doesn't." "What's that?" "The truth." He pulled her close. "And each other." Morning came too slowly and too fast. The courtroom was packed. Word had spread about the dramatic testimony, and it seemed half of Rapid City had come to witness the ruling. Jesse held Abigail's hand as they took their seats, feeling her pulse racing beneath his fingers. Judge Crane entered. The room rose, then sat in tense silence. "I have considered the evidence and arguments presented in this case carefully," Crane began. "The legal questions are complex. The emotional stakes are high, and the consequences of my ruling will affect 3 lives profoundly." He paused, his eyes sweeping the courtroom. "The petitioner argues that his marriage to Clara Mercer is valid and binding, and that the subsequent marriage to Jesse Winters is therefore fraudulent. There is merit to this argument. The law has traditionally upheld the primacy of first marriages." Jesse felt Abigail's hand tighten convulsively. "However," Crane continued, "the law also recognizes circumstances under which marriages can be annulled or set aside. Chief among these is cruelty, systematic abuse that renders the marriage contract void." His gaze settled on Thomas. "I have reviewed the medical evidence. I have heard testimony from witnesses. I have read the statements of 2 men who confessed to being paid to track Mrs. Winters and leave her to die. And I have watched Mrs. Winters herself stand in this courtroom and detail years of abuse with a courage that speaks to the truth of her account." Crane's voice hardened. "Thomas Mercer, you have presented yourself as a wronged husband seeking the return of his family. But the evidence tells a different story. It tells of a man who used his wife as a punching bag, who broke her bones and her spirit, who, when she finally escaped, hired men to ensure she never reached safety." "Your Honor," Pemberton began. "I am not finished, Mr. Pemberton." Crane's tone brooked no argument. "In light of this evidence, I am ruling that the marriage between Thomas Mercer and Clara Mercer is null and void on grounds of extreme cruelty. Furthermore, I am recognizing the marriage between Jesse Winters and Abigail Winters as valid and legally binding." The courtroom exploded. Abigail collapsed against Jesse, sobbing. He held her tight, his own eyes burning with tears he refused to shed. Around them, the gallery erupted in cheers and shouts, chaos reigning despite Crane's gavel. "Order, I am not finished." Slowly, the noise subsided. "As for the matter of the child Rose Winters," Crane emphasized the name deliberately, "I am granting full parental rights to Jesse and Abigail Winters. Thomas Mercer's parental rights are hereby terminated." Thomas surged to his feet. "You can't do this. She's my daughter, my blood." "Blood does not make a father," Crane said coldly. "Your actions have forfeited any claim you might have had to that child. Furthermore, I am referring the matter of the 2 men who abandoned Mrs. Winters to the territorial prosecutor. Criminal charges may be forthcoming." His gavel came down with finality. "This court is adjourned." Jesse barely heard the words. He was holding Abigail, feeling her tears soak through his shirt, watching over her shoulder, as Thomas Mercer stood frozen, his world crumbling around him. They had won. Against all odds, against all power and money and legal precedent, they had won. "It's over," Abigail whispered against his chest. "Jesse, it's over." "Yes." He kissed the top of her head. "It's over." But even as he said it, Jesse saw the look in Thomas Mercer's eyes. The cold, calculating fury that spoke of a man who had never lost. A man who didn't know how to accept defeat. The legal battle was won. But something in Jesse's gut told him the war wasn't over yet. The journey back to Silver Creek should have felt like a victory parade. Instead, Jesse rode with one hand on his rifle and his eyes constantly scanning the horizon. The court ruling was final, legally binding. But Thomas Mercer's face in that courtroom haunted him. That look of cold fury. That promise of retribution. Men like Thomas didn't accept defeat. They rewrote it. "You're watching the road like you expect an ambush," Abigail said from beside him in the wagon. "Maybe I do." "Jesse," she reached for his arm. "We won. It's over." "The law says it's over. Thomas hasn't agreed yet." Abigail fell silent. She knew he was right. 7 years of marriage had taught her exactly what Thomas was capable of when things didn't go his way. Rosie babbled happily in her mother's lap, oblivious to the tension. At least one of them could enjoy the moment. They reached Silver Creek 3 days later, exhausted but intact. The town turned out to greet them. Word of the verdict had traveled fast, and people who'd barely known Abigail a month ago now treated her like family. "Welcome home, Mrs. Winters," Luther Crane said, helping her down from the wagon. Home. The word hit Abigail like a physical force. She'd never had a home. Not really. Not since she was a girl in Boston before Thomas, before everything went wrong. "Thank you." She managed her voice thick. Nettie was waiting at the boarding house with hot food and warm beds. Doc Hawkins stopped by to check Abigail's feet, pronouncing them healed enough for normal activity. Sheriff Hollister came with news that Thomas had left Rapid City the day after the verdict, destination unknown. "He could be anywhere," Hollister warned. "Could have gone back east, could be circling around. I've got men watching the roads, but this is a lot of territory to cover." "He'll come here," Jesse said flatly. "He's not the type to walk away." "Then we'll be ready. But ready for what?" That was the question that kept Jesse awake through the long winter nights. An armed assault. Legal maneuvering. Something subtler, more insidious. Thomas Mercer had spent his whole life getting what he wanted. The idea that a frontier judge could simply take away his wife and child, it wouldn't compute. Somewhere in that twisted mind, he was already planning his next move. Jesse just had to figure out what it was before it was too late. 2 weeks passed in tense normalcy. Abigail threw herself into building a life in Silver Creek. She started helping Nettie at the boarding house, earning a small wage that she insisted on contributing to their household. She talked about maybe starting a school teaching the children whose parents couldn't afford to send them away for education. "You'd be good at that," Jesse told her one evening, watching her read to Rosie by the fire. "You think so?" "I know so. You've got patience, and you care about learning. Kids need teachers who care." Abigail smiled that real smile. He loved the one that reached her eyes. "Maybe in the spring, when things have settled. If things settled. If Thomas let them settle." Jesse kept working at Luther's livery building, a reputation as a steady hand and a fair man. He'd started saving money, dreaming of maybe buying some land, building a proper house for his family. A future he'd never imagined wanting was now all he could think about. But the shadow of Thomas Mercer hung over everything. "You're wound tighter than a new rope," Luther observed one afternoon, watching Jesse startle at a sudden noise. "Just being careful." Being careful is smart. Being scared is something else. Luther set down his tools and looked Jesse in the eye. "That woman of yours, she's starting to believe she might actually be safe. Starting to hope. Don't take that from her by jumping at every shadow. I'm not. You are. And I understand why. But living in fear ain't living. Whatever's coming, it'll come whether you're watching for it or not. Might as well enjoy the peace while you have it." Luther was right. Jesse knew it. But knowing and doing were different things. That night he made an effort. He came home early, bringing a small wooden horse he'd carved for Rosie. He helped Abigail cook dinner, something he'd never done before. He told stories about his years on the trail, making her laugh with tales of stubborn cattle and stubborner cowboys. For a few hours, he let himself forget. Then came the knock on the door. Jesse's hand went to his gun before he'd consciously decided to move. Abigail's face went white. Even Rosie, sensing the sudden tension, fell silent. "Jesse, Abigail." Nettie's voice came through the wood. "There's someone here to see you." Jesse opened the door, gun still in hand. Nettie stood in the hallway, her face grim. Behind her was a man Jesse didn't recognize, young, well-dressed, with the look of a clerk or secretary. "This is Mr. Porter," Nettie said carefully. "He says he's got a message from Thomas Mercer." Jesse's grip tightened on his weapon. "What kind of message?" Porter cleared his throat nervously. "Mr. Mercer wishes me to inform you that he accepts the court's ruling. He will not contest it further or pursue any legal remedies." Silence. That's it. Abigail had come to stand beside Jessie Rosie in her arms. "He's just giving up. Mr. Mercer also wishes to apologize for any distress he may have caused." Porter pulled an envelope from his coat. "He asked me to deliver this. A sum of money to help you establish yourselves. $5,000. Jessie didn't reach for the envelope. "Why, sir, why would Thomas Mercer apologize? Why would he give us money? That man doesn't do anything without expecting something in return." Porter shifted uncomfortably. "I'm only the messenger, Mr. Winters. I don't presume to understand Mr. Mercer's motivations. Where is he now?" "I'm not at liberty to say. Not at liberty or don't know." Porter's eyes flickered, just for a second, but it was enough. "He's still here," Jessie said flatly. "Still in the territory. This is a trick. Mr. Winters, I assure you. Get out." Jessie stepped forward and Porter stumbled back. "Go back to your employer and tell him we don't want his money. We don't want his apologies. We want him gone. Permanently." Porter fled without another word. Nettie watched him go, then turned to Jessie. "You think it's a trap?" "I know it's a trap. I just don't know what kind yet." Abigail was trembling. "Why can't he just leave us alone? He lost. The court ruled against him. Why can't he just accept it? Because men like Thomas don't lose." Jessie pulled her close. Rosie squeezed between them. "They redefine the game until they win. So what do? We stay alert, we don't let our guard down, and we wait for him to make his move." They didn't have to wait long. 3 days later, Sheriff Hollister rode in with news that chilled Jessie's blood. "He's bought the bank," Hollister said without preamble. "Silver Creek Savings and Loan. Thomas Mercer now owns the mortgage on half the buildings in town, including this boarding house." Nettie went pale. "That's impossible. The bank wasn't for sale." "It is when you offer 3 times its value in cash." Hollister's jaw was tight. "He's also bought the general store and made an offer on the hotel. Anyone who owes money in Silver Creek now owes it to Thomas Mercer." "He's buying the town," Jessie realized. "He's going to use economic pressure to drive us out. Or drive the town against you. If he calls in loans, raises rents, makes life difficult enough for people. They'll blame us." Abigail's voice was hollow. "They'll turn on us to save themselves." "Some might, some won't." Hollister met Jessie's eyes. "But he's changed the battlefield. This isn't about guns anymore. It's about survival." Jessie felt something cold settle in his chest. Thomas had found a way around the court ruling, around the law, around everything they'd built. He couldn't take Abigail by force, so he'd take everything else until she had no choice but to come back to him. "What do we do?" he asked. "I don't know." Hollister shook his head. "I'm a lawman. I know how to handle outlaws and criminals. This using money as a weapon, I don't know how to fight this." "Maybe we don't fight it." Abigail's voice was quiet. "Maybe I go to him." "What? If I go back, if I agree to return?" "No." Jessie grabbed her shoulders. "No. That's exactly what he wants. He's trying to force your hand, make you feel like there's no other choice. But there's always another choice." "What choice?" "Watch this town suffer because of me. Watch Nettie lose her home. Watch people turn against us because Thomas Mercer can starve them into submission." "Abigail, I can't do that, Jessie." Tears were streaming down her face. "I can't be the reason innocent people lose everything. Maybe if I just—" "No." He pulled her into his arms, holding her tight. "Listen to me. You walked through a blizzard to escape that man. You testified in court, told your story to strangers, faced him down when everything in you wanted to run. You did all that for Rosie. For the chance at a life worth living. He tilted her face up to meet his eyes. Don't give that up now. Don't let him win by making you think you have no choice. We'll find another way. Together. How? Jesse didn't have an answer. But he'd find one. He had to. The town meeting was called for the next evening. Nearly everyone in Silver Creek crammed into the church, the only building large enough to hold them all. Jesse stood with Abigail near the back, feeling the weight of hostile stares from some supportive nods from others. Thomas Mercer stood at the front, flanked by lawyers and accountants. He looked every inch the respectable businessman, not a hair out of place, his voice smooth and reasonable as he addressed the crowd. I want to be clear, Thomas said. I'm not here to cause trouble. I'm here to invest. Silver Creek has potential, and I see opportunity. What kind of opportunity? Someone called out. Growth, development, a proper bank that can fund expansion, a general store with better goods at fair prices. Thomas smiled. I want to help this town prosper. And what do you want in return? Luther Crane's voice cut through the murmurs. Thomas's smile didn't waver. Simply to be part of the community, to contribute, to show that I'm not the monster some have painted me as. His eyes found Abigail in the crowd. My former wife and I had our differences. The court ruled in her favor, and I accept that ruling. But I hope that in time the people of Silver Creek will judge me by my actions here, not by accusations made in a distant courtroom. It was masterful. Jesse had to admit that. Thomas was positioning himself as the reasonable one, the generous benefactor, while subtly painting Abigail as the troubled woman who'd spread lies about him. He's good, Abigail whispered. He was always good at this, making people believe whatever he wanted them to believe. Not everyone. Enough. Enough will believe him. Jesse watched the crowd reading faces. Thomas was right. Some people were nodding, accepting his narrative. Money talked, and Thomas had a lot of it to spread around. But others looked skeptical, unconvinced by smooth words and expensive suits. The question was, which group would prevail? I have a question. Nettie stepped forward, her voice cutting through the buzz. You say you want to be part of this community. But you bought the mortgage on my boarding house, a business that was doing just fine without even talking to me first. That feel like being neighborly to you? Thomas's smile tightened slightly. A business transaction, Mrs. Price. Nothing personal. Funny how your business transactions all seem to circle around buildings connected to your former wife. Nettie's eyes were sharp. The boarding house where she lives, the general store where she shops, the bank that holds what little savings she has. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. You're here to invest, Nettie continued. But it sure looks like you're here to squeeze, to make life so hard for certain people that they have no choice but to do what you want. That's absurd. Is it? Doc Hawkins spoke up now. I treated your wife when she arrived in Silver Creek, Mr. Mercer. I saw the bruises, the broken bones, the frostbite from walking barefoot through a blizzard to escape you. Those injuries occurred during her confused flight. I've been a doctor for 30 years. I know the difference between accident injuries and abuse injuries. Hawkins' voice was hard. And I know a man who can't accept losing when I see one. The crowd was shifting now, the skeptical faction growing as Nettie and Hawkins spoke their piece. Thomas's mask was slipping. Jesse could see the rage building behind his eyes, the same rage that had terrified Abigail for 7 years. This is ridiculous, Thomas snapped. I come here offering investment opportunity, and I'm treated like a criminal, based on the word of a hysterical woman and a drifter cowboy who saw an opportunity. Watch your mouth. Jesse stepped forward. That hysterical woman is my wife, and she's got more courage in her little finger than you've got in your whole body. Your wife. Thomas laughed bitterly. A marriage of convenience to escape her lawful husband. Do you really think that means anything? Do you think she loves you? I know she does. She's using you, Mr. Winters, the way she uses everyone. You're a tool to her, nothing more, a means to an end. And you were a prison. Abigail's voice rang out, silencing the crowd. She stepped forward past Jesse, past the protective barrier of supporters, until she stood facing Thomas directly. That's what our marriage was, Thomas. A prison. 7 years of being told I was worthless. 7 years of walking on eggshells, terrified of setting off your temper. 7 years of covering bruises and making excuses and dying inside a little more each day. Clara. My name is Abigail. Her voice didn't waver. You don't get to call me Clara anymore. You don't get to rename me, redefine me, rewrite what happened between us. Everything I did was for your own good. You broke my ribs, Thomas, 3 times. You choked me until I passed out. You locked me in my room for days when I displeased you. Her voice grew stronger with each word. And when I finally escaped, you sent men to watch me die in the snow. The crowd was utterly silent. You want these people to believe you're a reasonable man, a generous investor. You're a monster. You've always been a monster. And I spent 7 years believing your lies, believing I deserved what you did to me. But I don't believe them anymore. Thomas's face had gone purple. The mask was completely gone now, replaced by the fury Abigail knew so well. You ungrateful... I'm done being grateful. Abigail stepped closer. I'm done being afraid. You can buy every building in this town. You can call in every loan raise, every rent. Make life as difficult as you possibly can. But you can't have me. You can't have Rosie. And you can't make me believe I'm worthless ever again. Thomas's hand came up. Jesse moved, but he wasn't fast enough. Abigail caught Thomas's wrist before the blow could land. Not this time, she said quietly. Never again. For a long moment they stood frozen, Abigail holding her former husband's wrist, refusing to flinch, refusing to look away. The crowd watched in shocked silence. Then Thomas crumbled. It happened slowly at first. His face went from rage to confusion, to something that looked almost like fear. His hand dropped. His shoulders slumped. He took a step back, then another. You were mine, he whispered. You were supposed to be mine. I was never yours, Thomas. I was my own person. You just couldn't see it. Thomas looked around the room at the hostile faces, the closed ranks of a community that had chosen sides. At the sheriff, whose hand rested on his gun. At the cowboy, who stood ready to protect the woman he loved. He'd lost. Not just the legal battle, not just the economic war. He'd lost the thing he wanted most, the power to make Abigail afraid. This isn't over, he said, but there was no conviction in his voice. Yes, it is. Abigail's voice was gentle now, almost pitying. Go home, Thomas. Go back to Boston and find someone else to control. But it won't be me. It will never be me again. Thomas stood there for a long moment, something broken in his eyes. Then, without another word, he turned and walked out of the church. No one tried to stop him. The room erupted. People were shouting, crying, embracing. Nettie had her arms around Abigail. Doc Hawkins was shaking Jesse's hand. Even Sheriff Hollister looked moved. But Jesse only had eyes for his wife. She stood in the center of the chaos, tears streaming down her face, her whole body shaking. He pushed through the crowd and pulled her into his arms. You did it, he murmured against her hair. You faced him down. I was terrified. I know. But you did it anyway. That's what courage is. I couldn't have done it without you. She pulled back to look at him. Without knowing you were there. Without knowing you'd catch me if I fell. Always, he promised. Always. The aftermath was chaos, but it was good chaos. Thomas left Silver Creek that night. He sold his hastily acquired properties at a loss, practically throwing them at anyone who would take them off his hands. Within a week, he was gone from the territory, entirely reportedly heading back east on the fastest train he could catch. The town celebrated like they'd won a war. which in a way they had. "He's really gone," Abigail said a week later, standing at the window of their room at Nettie's. "I keep expecting to see him around every corner, but he's really gone. The sheriff got word yesterday. He's in Philadelphia. Apparently, he's facing questions from some business associates about his behavior out west." Jesse came to stand behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "Seems his reputation didn't survive this little adventure." "Good." The word came out fierce. "He deserves worse, but good." Rosie was playing on the floor, babbling happily to a wooden doll that Luther had carved for her. She looked up at her parents and smiled that pure, innocent smile that still made Jesse's heart clench. "What now?" Abigail asked. "What do we do with this freedom we've fought so hard for?" "Whatever we want." Jesse rested his chin on her shoulder. "Stay here. Build a life. You could start that school you talked about. I could buy some land, maybe get a few cattle. We could build something real. Something permanent. If you want it to be." Abigail turned in his arms to face him. "I want it. I want all of it. The school, the land, the house. I want to watch Rosie grow up safe. I want to grow old with you. I want everything I never thought I could have." "Then you'll have it." Jesse kissed her forehead. "We'll have it. Together." "I love you, Jesse Winters." "I love you too, Abigail Winters." He smiled. "Still got a nice ring to it." She laughed a real laugh, free and full, and kissed him properly. Rosie chose that moment to grab Jesse's leg, demanding to be picked up. He lifted her easily, settling her on his hip while keeping one arm around Abigail. His family, his future, his purpose. Everything he never knew he was looking for, found in a snowdrift with a baby's cry leading the way. "Come on," he said. "Nettie's making dinner, and I heard Luther might have found a piece of land that's coming up for sale. 40 acres on the edge of town." 40 acres. Abigail's eyes lit up. "That's a real homestead." "That's a real home." They walked out together into a future that for the first time seemed bright with possibility. The storm had passed. Now came the building. Spring came to Silver Creek like a promise kept. The snow melted slowly, revealing earth that had been frozen for months. The days grew longer. The air grew warmer. And the Winters family began building their future. Jesse closed the deal on the 40 acres in late March. Luther had been right. It was good land. Flat enough for farming, with a creek running through for water and a gentle rise where a house could sit and watch the sunset. "It's perfect," Abigail breathed when Jesse first brought her to see it. "It's dirt and grass right now, but it'll be perfect. Give me time." "We have time now." She squeezed his hand. "All the time in the world." They broke ground on the house in April. Half the town turned out to help, men who'd stood with them against Thomas, women who'd welcomed Abigail into their community, children who'd started calling Jesse Mr. Winters, with a respect that still made him uncomfortable. "You don't have to do this," Jesse told Luther as the older man helped frame the walls. "You've done enough already." "Done enough?" Luther laughed. "Son, I've been waiting 60 years to see a man stand up for what's right the way you did. Helping you build a house is the least I can do." "I just did what anyone would do." "No." Luther's eyes were serious. "You did what few men would dare. That woman of yours, she was drowning when you found her. Drowning in fear and pain and hopelessness. You threw her a rope. You pulled her to shore. And then you stood between her and the storm that was trying to drag her back under." Jesse didn't know what to say. "That's not nothing, Jesse Winters. That's everything." The house took shape through the spring months. 4 rooms more than they needed now, but Jesse was building for the future. A kitchen, a main room, 2 bedrooms, space to grow, space to breathe. Abigail watched it rise with wonder in her eyes. "I never had a home before," she told Jesse one evening as they sat on the half-finished porch. "Not really. My father's house was his, not mine. Thomas's house was a prison. But this is ours. Ours." She tested the word like it was something precious. I never thought I'd have an ours. Never thought I'd have a partner who built things with me instead of tearing me down. Jessie pulled her close. Get used to it. We've got a lot of building ahead of us. Rosie was walking properly now, more than walking, running everywhere her little legs could carry her. She'd claimed the homestead as her kingdom, toddling across the grass, picking wildflowers, chattering away in a language only she understood. Papa? She ran to Jessie whenever he appeared, arms outstretched, face bright with joy. The word still hit him like a punch every time. Papa. His daughter. His family. Hey, little one. He swung her up, settling her on his hip. What did you find today? Rosie showed him a dandelion, crushed but precious. Flower. That's beautiful. You gonna give it to Mama? Mama. Rosie squirmed to get down, toddling off toward Abigail, with her treasure clutched tight. Jessie watched her go, his chest aching with a feeling he still couldn't quite name. Was this what happiness felt like? This fullness, this completeness, this sense that everything was exactly where it should be. He'd spent 17 years convinced he didn't deserve this, didn't deserve roots, family love. He'd believed he was meant to drift, to pass through without leaving marks or taking them. One baby's cry in a blizzard had changed everything. The school opened in May. Abigail had been planning it for months, gathering books, designing lessons, talking to parents about what their children needed. The church agreed to let her use their building on weekday mornings. 14 students signed up for the first-term, children whose parents couldn't afford to send them away, who would have grown up without education if not for Mrs. Winter's determination. Nervous? Jessie asked on the first day. Terrified. Abigail smoothed her dress for the 100th time. What if I can't do this? What if I fail them? You won't. How do you know? Because you're the woman who walked through a blizzard for her daughter. The woman who stood up to Thomas Mercer in front of a whole town. The woman who turned a marriage of convenience into something real. Jessie took her hands. Teaching a bunch of kids to read, that's nothing compared to what you've already done. Abigail laughed, that free, full laugh he loved. When you put it that way, go. Change some lives. I'll have dinner ready when you get home. She kissed him longer than necessary, but neither of them complained, and headed off to meet her students. Jessie watched her go, pride swelling in his chest. This was the woman Thomas Mercer had called worthless. The woman he'd tried to break, to control, to destroy. Look at her now. The first term was a triumph. Abigail discovered she had a gift for teaching, for making lessons come alive, for reaching children who'd given up on learning. Her students adored her. Their parents couldn't stop singing her praises. By June, she had a waiting list for the fall term. We might need a real schoolhouse, she told Jessie one evening, poring over her notes. The church is generous, but it's cramped, and Pastor Williams needs it for Sunday services. So we'll build one. Abigail looked up. What? We've got land. We've got people who know how to build. We'll put up a schoolhouse right here on our property. Make it part of the homestead. Jessie, that's too much. It's not enough. He sat beside her, taking her hand. You found something you love. Something that matters. I'm not going to let cramped space and scheduling conflicts take that away from you. But the cost? We'll manage. We always do. Abigail stared at him, eyes bright with tears. Do you know how different you are from him? From Thomas. I try not to think about him much. I know, but I do think about him. Every time you support me instead of controlling me. Every time you encourage my dreams instead of crushing them. Every time you build something up instead of tearing it down. She squeezed his hand. I think about how lucky I am that you were the one who found us in that snow. Luck had nothing to do with it. What do you mean? Jessie was quiet for a moment, searching for words. I've been thinking about that a lot. Why I was there. Why I stopped. Why everything happened the way it did. And, and I think maybe I was supposed to find you. Not fate or destiny or any of that, but maybe I spent 17 years drifting because I was looking for something. I just didn't know what it was until I heard Rosie crying in that wind. Abigail's tears spilled over. Jesse, you saved me too, Abigail. You and Rosie. You gave me a reason to stop running, a reason to build instead of drift, a reason to be the man I always wanted to be, but was too scared to try. You were never scared. I was terrified. He met her eyes. Terrified of caring, terrified of losing, terrified of letting myself want something I might not get to keep. But you were worth being scared for. Both of you. They held each other for a long time, no words needed. Some things were bigger than words. Summer brought news from the east. Sheriff Hollister rode out to the homestead one July afternoon, his face carefully neutral. Jesse felt the old fear spike, that primal alertness that still hadn't fully faded, but Hollister's first words eased it. Thomas Mercer is dead. Jesse blinked. What? Got word from Philadelphia yesterday. Apparently he got into some business trouble after he left here. Bad investments, creditors calling in debts. His reputation was shot too. People had heard about what happened in Wyoming. Hollister paused. He shot himself 2 weeks ago. Jesse didn't know what to feel. Relief? Satisfaction? Pity? Does Abigail know? Thought you should tell her. Didn't seem like the kind of news that should come from a stranger. Jesse found Abigail in the half-finished schoolhouse, measuring for bookshelves. Rosie was playing nearby, building towers out of wood scraps and knocking them down with gleeful destruction. Abigail. She turned at his tone, saw his face, went pale. What happened? Is someone hurt? No one's hurt. Jesse crossed to her, taking her hands. It's Thomas. He's dead. Abigail went absolutely still. How? He killed himself 2 weeks ago. Business trouble, apparently. His reputation was ruined after everything that happened here. For a long moment, Abigail didn't react. Then slowly she sank onto a half-built bench, her legs giving out. He's really gone, she whispered. Not just gone from Silver Creek. Gone. Yes. I should feel something. Her voice was strange, distant. Shouldn't I? He was my husband for 7 years, the father of my daughter. I should feel something. What do you feel? Abigail considered the question seriously. Empty, like there's been a weight on my chest for so long I forgot it was there. And now it's gone, and I don't know what to do with all this space. Jesse sat beside her. That's okay. You don't have to feel any particular way. You don't owe him grief. I keep thinking about who he could have been. If he'd been different. If he'd been kind. Abigail shook her head. But he wasn't. He chose violence. He chose control. He chose to be a monster. And now he's gone, and all I feel is... What? Free. She looked at him with something like wonder. Completely, finally free. No more looking over my shoulder. No more wondering when he'll appear. No more fear. No more fear, Jesse agreed. It's over, Abigail. Really over this time. Rosie chose that moment to knock over her tower with particular enthusiasm. Papa, look. Jesse laughed, the sound releasing tension he hadn't known he was holding. I see, little one. Very impressive destruction. Again. Again. Jesse agreed. He looked at Abigail. You okay? I will be. She took a deep breath. I think I will be. Fall brought changes. The schoolhouse was finished in September. A proper building with real desks, a blackboard Nettie had ordered special from Denver, and windows that let in enough light for reading. 22 students enrolled for the fall term, and Abigail had to turn away 3 more. We might need to expand next year, she told Jesse, equal parts overwhelmed and delighted. Then we'll expand. You say that like it's simple. It is simple. He wrapped his arms around her from behind as she stood at the schoolhouse window. You need something, we figure out how to get it. That's what partners do. Partners. She leaned back against him. I still love the sound of that. The homestead itself was thriving. Jesse had acquired a small herd of cattle, enough to start building towards something sustainable. The garden Abigail had planted was producing more than they could eat, so she'd started trading surplus to the general store. Their little piece of Wyoming was becoming a real home. But the biggest change came in October. Abigail had been feeling poorly for weeks, tired, nauseated, emotional in ways that didn't make sense. Jesse worried, remembering her condition when he'd found her fearing some delayed effect of that terrible journey. Doc Hawkins put those fears to rest with a smile. Congratulations, Mrs. Winters, you're expecting. Abigail stared at him. I'm what? Pregnant. About 2 months along, I'd say. Baby should arrive in late spring. Jesse felt the world tilt sideways. A baby. That's typically what pregnant means, Mr. Winters. A baby. Jesse sat down heavily. Our baby. Abigail burst into tears. I'm sorry, she sobbed. I don't know why I'm crying. I'm happy, I'm so happy, but I can't stop. That's normal. Hawkins patted her shoulder. Happens with pregnancy. Your husband looks like he might need some water, though. Jesse was in fact having trouble breathing. A baby. His baby. A child born of love instead of obligation, wanted instead of endured, welcomed instead of feared. Jesse! Abigail's voice cut through his shock. Is this okay? Okay. He looked at her, this woman who'd survived so much, overcome so much, who now carried new life inside her, and felt tears prick his own eyes. Abigail, this is everything. He pulled her into his arms, holding her tight, feeling her heart beat against his chest. We're having a baby, he whispered. A real baby. A brother or sister for Rosie. A family. We're already a family. A bigger family. Jesse pulled back to look at her, his hands cradling her face. I love you. I love you so much I don't have words for it. And I'm going to love this baby the same way I love Rosie, with everything I have. I know. Abigail kissed him through her tears. I know you will. That's why I'm not scared. Not even a little. Not even a little. The winter of their second year in Silver Creek was different from the first. This time, Jesse watched the snow fall with wonder instead of dread. This time, the cold meant evenings by the fire with his family, not desperate rides through blizzards. This time, winter was something to be savored, not survived. Rosie was talking in full sentences now, her vocabulary expanding daily, her personality emerging in delightful ways. She was stubborn, Jesse had noticed, determined. She knew what she wanted and went after it with single-minded focus. She's like you, Abigail observed. She's like you. I saw that stubbornness when you stood up to Thomas, when you testified in court, when you faced him down in front of the whole town. Maybe she's like both of us. God help us all. Christmas came with the first real celebration the Winters family had ever known. They hosted dinner at the homestead, Nettie Doc Hawkins, Luther, Sheriff Hollister, and a dozen others who'd become something like extended family. The house was full of laughter and warmth, and the chaos of too many people in too small a space. Jesse stood in the doorway, watching it all, feeling something swell in his chest. Penny for your thoughts. Abigail appeared beside him, her belly just starting to show beneath her dress. Just thinking about how different this is. Last Christmas, I was in Montana, sleeping in a bunkhouse with a dozen other cowboys. Nobody to care if I lived or died. And now I've got all this. He gestured at the crowded room. A home, a family, friends, more than I ever thought I'd have. Do you miss it, the drifting? Not for a second. He pulled her close, his hand settling on her belly. I found what I was looking for. Didn't even know I was looking for it until it found me. We found each other. Abigail rested her head on his shoulder. In the worst possible circumstances. And somehow it turned into this. That's how it works sometimes. The worst moments lead to the best ones. That sounds like wisdom. It sounds like something Luther would say. I'm probably stealing it. Abigail laughed, and the sound was the best Christmas present Jessie could imagine. Spring came again, and with it, new life. The baby arrived on a warm April morning after a long night of labor that tested everyone's nerves. Jessie paced the porch like a caged animal, while Doc Hawkins and Nettie attended Abigail inside. Rosie, sensing the tension, clung to his leg and refused to let go. "It's okay, little one," Jessie kept telling her. "Mama's okay. Everything's okay." He wasn't sure he believed it himself. Then came the cry. Not Abigail's, the baby's. A strong, healthy wail that split the morning air and brought Jessie to his knees. "Mr. Winters?" Nettie appeared in the doorway, her face tired but beaming. "Come meet your son." His son. Jessie carried Rosie inside, both of them trembling. Abigail lay in bed, exhausted but radiant, holding a tiny bundle against her chest. She looked up when Jessie entered, and her smile made everything else disappear. "Come here," she said softly. "Come meet Cole." "Cole," Jessie's voice cracked. "Cole, Jesse Winters. So there's no doubt who his father is." Jessie sat on the edge of the bed, Rosie still in his arms, and looked down at his son. The baby was perfect, tiny fingers, tiny toes, a face scrunched up with the effort of existing. "He's beautiful," Jessie managed. "He looks like you." "Poor kid." Abigail laughed weakly. "He's lucky. He has you for a father." Rosie leaned over to peer at the baby. "Brother." "That's right, sweetheart. Your baby brother." "Hi, brother." Rosie patted the baby's head gently. "I'm Rosie." Jessie felt tears streaming down his face. He didn't bother to wipe them away. This was his family. This woman who'd walked through hell to find safety. This daughter who'd called him to her with her cries. This son who bore his name. This life they'd built from nothing but determination and love. 2 years ago, he'd been a drifter with no purpose, no ties, no future. Now he had everything. The years unfolded like pages in a book. Cole grew from a baby, into a toddler, into a boy, with his father's eyes and his mother's stubbornness. Rosie grew into a young woman who helped her mother teach at the school, who had her father's quiet strength and her mother's fierce heart. The homestead expanded, more land, more cattle, more buildings, until the Winters spread was one of the most respected in the territory. Abigail's school became legendary. Students came from 3 counties away to learn from Mrs. Winters, the woman who made learning an adventure. She trained other teachers. She wrote curriculum. She turned Silver Creek into an unlikely center of frontier education. Jessie never drifted again. Some nights when the children were asleep and the house was quiet, he and Abigail would sit on their porch and look out at the land they'd built together. They'd talk about the early days, about the blizzard, about the trial, about all the moments that had seemed impossible until they weren't. "Do you remember what you said when you first proposed?" Abigail asked one such evening 15 years after that desperate winter. "I said a lot of things, most of them probably stupid. You said it wasn't about love. It was about protection." Jessie winced. "I was an idiot." "You were honest." Abigail laced her fingers through his. "You didn't promise me something you couldn't give. You didn't pretend to feel something you didn't. You just offered what you had. And look where we ended up. Look where we ended up." Abigail leaned against him. "I love you, Jessie Winters. I loved you before I knew how to say it, before I believed I was capable of loving anyone again. I loved you before I admitted it to myself, before I understood what love even meant. And now," Jessie thought about the question, about 17 years of drifting, about a baby's cry in a blizzard, about a woman collapsed in the snow with her arms locked around her child, about a choice to stop to help to stay, about a marriage of convenience that became a marriage of love, about children and community and a home built with his own hands. "Now I can't imagine my life without you," he said quietly. "Can't imagine who I'd be where I'd be if I'd ridden past that day. You and Rosie, you didn't just change my life, you gave me one." "You gave us one too." Abigail's voice was thick. "You were our second chance, our new beginning. Everything good in our lives started with you stopping in that storm. Everything good in my life started with your daughter crying loud enough to be heard over the wind." They sat in comfortable silence, two people who'd found each other against impossible odds and built something beautiful from the wreckage of their pasts. Inside, their children slept safe and warm. Outside, the Wyoming night stretched vast and peaceful. Somewhere in that darkness, the ghosts of who they'd been drifted away, no longer needed, no longer relevant. They were Winters now, a family forged in crisis, tempered by trial, strengthened by love. "I've been thinking," Abigail said finally. "About what?" "About how stories get told. About how people remember things. Someday when we're gone, what do you think people will say about us?" Jesse considered. "They'll probably say I was a stubborn cowboy who married above his station. They'll say I was a Boston woman who found home in Wyoming. They'll say we built a school and a ranch and raised kids who did good in the world. But that's not really our story, is it?" "No." Jesse pulled her closer. "Our story is simpler than that." "Tell me." Jesse looked out at the land, their land, and felt the truth of it settle in his bones. The truth that had been there since the beginning, since a baby's cry pierced through a blizzard and changed everything. "A woman needed help," he said quietly. "A man was there to give it. And somehow, against all odds, they turned survival into love." Abigail smiled. "That's a good story." "It's the best one I know." They stayed on the porch until the stars came out, counting their blessings, holding their peace, grateful for every moment that had led them to this quiet, perfect evening. Two people who'd been broken. Two people who'd been lost. Two people who'd found each other in the worst possible moment and built the best possible life. That was the truth of Jesse and Abigail Winters. That was their legacy. And it all started with a choice, a simple, impossible, life-changing choice to stop in a blizzard when a baby cried out for help. Sometimes the smallest decisions create the biggest destinies. Sometimes a stranger becomes family. Sometimes love finds you in the snow. And sometimes, if you're brave enough to reach for it, second chances become forever. The end.